Hello guys, and welcome back to Coding Orbit, and welcome back to the Firebase tutorial. In the previous video, we created this sign up page and we implemented Firebase authentication into our Flutter app, and we had our first user in the Firebase console. Now, today we will continue with Firebase features. So today we will continue with Firebase Firestore. But first we have to enable it in the console. So head over to build, then click Firebase Firestore database, and it won't take you to this page first time you click it. It will actually take you to another page which has a button saying enable, and once you click on the button it will load a little bit, then ask you if you want it in test mode or production mode. Choose test mode for now and it will take you to this page. Alright, now after it show you this page, we don't have to do anything. We don't have to create our collections from here. We will actually create it from the mobile app using Flutter. But before we do that, before we implement Firestore into Flutter, we need to add a package which is Cloud Firestore. So we'll go to installing and we will copy Cloud Firestore. Then we'll head over to pubspec.yaml and paste it here and save it and wait for it to load. Now, after we do that, we are ready to start implementing Firestore into our app. Alright, now let's start implementing Firestore into our app. Let's go to screen, sign up. If you remember from the previous video, we already created email controller, password controller, and a name controller. However, in the services, in the Firebase helper, we are only using the email and the password. We're not using the name. So in this video, we will start using the name because the name doesn't go with create user with email and password. So we will use Firestore in order to save the name and other users' data. Now let's go back to sign up, and in sign up we don't have to change anything. I only change a small thing. I used to have onChange here and change the email, password, and name controller in the onChange. I'm not doing that anymore, and that was the issue for the reverse typing. Now let's go back to the services, Firebase helper, and we will basically work in here. Alright, now first things first, we need to create an instance for the Firebase Firestore as we have an instance for the Firebase auth. So I will say static final Firebase Firestore, and let's call it db is equal to Firebase Firestore.instance. Alright. Now before we continue, I need to save many data about the user, such as the name, and later we have to generate a token and save it, and maybe we can save created at time, and the platform the user is using, and the UID, the user UID, because that's what differentiates the user from another user. Basically, it's the ID for the user. To do that, we can make it as a map and save it to Firebase Firestore. But what's better than that is using models and classes. So let's come here in the lib and create a new directory called models. And inside it, let's create user, just users.dart, or user without the s. Okay, now we can create a class called user model. And this class might have final, string ID, or UID, as well as final, string name, final, string platform, if you want to know what the user is using, Android, iOS, or any other. And we can have final, string token, and final, string created at, and now we can say const user model, and let's have them all named. Required this dot created at, required this dot name, required this dot platform, required this dot token, required this dot UID, and that's it. Now before we continue in implementing Firestore, we need to have two methods, one from to.json and the other is from JSON. But because this model is too small, I'm not going to use any external library. I'm just gonna write it myself. So we can say factory user model dot from JSON, and this takes map string dynamic JSON and returns to us user model. Okay, so UID would be JSON with UID, and let me just copy it a little bit. Okay, now here we can have created at, and here we can have platform, and here we can have the token, and here we can have the name. I guess that's all. Now let's take this here, 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 sorry. Okay, sorry. All right. Sorry again. Okay, now the from JSON is ready. We need to have a method to JSON in order to upload. We can make use of the from JSON, the data we have in Firestore. We can change it to models from the from JSON model method, and we can create two JSON model to change this model into JSON. So let's create map string dynamic, and let's call it to JSON. It doesn't take anything, however it returns a JSON, and this JSON is actually like this. So UID takes in the UID we have, token takes the token we have, and name as the name we have, and platform takes the platform that we have, and finally created at takes the created at that we have, and that's it. That's it for this model. Alright, now since we have our model and since we have Firebase Firestore installed, we can start implementing Firebase Firestore into our app. Now the first thing I want to do, I want to continue typing beneath this. So I'm not gonna return true here, I'm actually gonna return false if this is equal to null. Otherwise, later on, finally we'll return true. But before we do that, here, start implementing Firestore. Okay, now the first thing we need to do, we need to create a ref. So let's call this var user ref is equal to, let's call it db.collections. So we need to provide a name or a path for our collections. And as we saw previously, we don't have any. So we can create one here. And if it's created, it won't create a new one or write on top of it. So we can say users.document, and here we need to provide a document. Now the document we will be using is the UID for the user. That's why we made sure if the user is null, we're gonna stop. Otherwise, we are going to continue. So we're gonna say credentials.user.uid. Okay, we can force unwrap the user since the since we already checked if the user is null, we're gonna stop. Okay, now since we have our user ref, we have methods such as set that we will be using in a while. We have set and get. So now we will use set in a while after we create our model. So first thing, in order to have the time, I'm just gonna say final now equal to date time dot now. Sorry, dot now. Okay, and final string created at is equal to, let's say, now dot year dash now dot month dash now dot day, and that's it for the created at. Okay, now we need to have a token, final string token, but I'm gonna set it to nothing, and I'm gonna say to do generate user token, We will cover this later as we move on in the playlist. Now, since we have the created ad, the token, and we already have the user UID, which we used for the document, and we have the name, we only have one thing to cover, which is the platform, and we will do that while we're creating the model. So I'm gonna say final user model is equal to user model. All right, now created ad, we have it, name, we have it, token, we have it, UID is credential.user and first and web user.uid. Okay, now we only have to cover the platform. So to know the platform, we're gonna just say platform, and make sure you don't import dart.html, we import dart.io. So platform from dart.io we're gonna say operating system, and this returns to us the operating system, which might be Android, iOS, macOS, web, whatever we are using. So, but we're gonna use it for Android or iOS. Now, since we have the user, we previously said that we're gonna use the user ref. So we're gonna say user ref dot set. But as you can see, the user ref uses map string dynamic. So that's why we will say user model dot do JSON, which will change the model that we created into JSON without typing the JSON again ourselves. The toJSON method will do it itself. And once we retrieve the data from the Firebase Firestore, we're gonna use the from JSON method. But now let's make if this method works. So we can say await here because this takes a while. All right, and that's it for the Firebase Firestore here. Now, whenever we call this method, it will add it to the Firebase Firestore. But before we test this, I need to do something. I need to remove the scaffold messenger from here. I'm gonna keep the try catch, but I'm just gonna remove the scaffold messenger from here, and I'm gonna remove the build context because we shouldn't be sending build context to the service. The context should stay in here, especially because we are having an async context. So the user might leave the page and then the response might come later. So this isn't a good way to do that. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna have here try catch inside here. But before, okay, inside here, let me have try and then catch, exception E, and here, okay. Now in the try, I'm gonna have all of these. Even if it's not in the try, I'm gonna keep the set the state for later. Okay, and I guess that's it. We don't have to do anything special in here. We just have to call the save user and it will do it. All right, now let's run the app to see if it will work. And let me just add a debug point here to see the is saved in case we didn't see it. And let me see the terminal. I need the debug. Okay, it appears we are having an error. Okay, so it appears we have a mismatch error for the versions. So since we are having the latest Cloud Firestore version, I'm gonna update the Firebase core. So let's go back to popspec.yaml, popdev, sorry, and let's see the newest version and have it instead. Okay, now let's save popspec.yaml, or let's type ourselves flutter pubget. Okay, now let's try and rerun the app again. Hopefully it will work. All right, and it did work this time. So let's go to the emulator. Let's type an email. Let's say abc@gmail.com, or without .com. I just want to test the scaffold messenger that we had in the screen instead of the service. Let's enter a password 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 and enter a name, let's say Golf, and sign up. It shouldn't accept this email, but let's see what Firebase would say. Okay, so we saved, it is false. However, it didn't print anything. And I assume that's because we left the try catch in here. So I'm gonna remove this one along with this try. Hopefully this would solve this issue. Okay, so let's say abc.or@gmail. Okay, so 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 and call again, sign up, and hopefully this time it will show us. Okay, it did. So this email is badly formatted, and that's because we need to say .com or something. Now let's say sign up, and hopefully it will add the user into the authentication, and as you can see, is saved is true, and it's gonna print, if we clear this, it's gonna print true here. Okay, so hopefully it will add the user into the authentication. If we go here, we have this new email, I think ABC, yeah, this one we just added today, August 4. And if we go to Firestore database, we shall have the user also with the information that we had. You can see that we already have users with the ID that we have, along with created at, the name, Android token is null, and the UID same as this UID. So that was all regarding set. Now we need to have a look at the get. As we uploaded this information, we need to have it. So let's go back to Visual Studio Code, and let's do that in a different screen. Inside the screen, let's create a new screen. Let's say home.dart. And inside here, let's have stateless widget, and let's call it home page or screen. Okay, and let me remove these two imports and import material.dart. Okay, so inside here, for now, we're gonna return center. Inside it, or before the center, we have to return scaffold. Inside the scaffold, let's have an up bar, and let's say up bar title text. Let's say home screen with center title to true. Okay, now the body of the scaffold, let's have it as center, and the child, let's have it as stream builder, because we will retrieve the data as a stream. So, and this stream would be query snapshot. So inside this stream, we're gonna have to define a builder, and the builder is context snapshot. And let me just have semicolon here. We're gonna work inside here after we finish with the Firebase helper. So we have a method for saving a user, and we shall have a method for retrieving a user. So down here, I'm gonna say static stream query snapshot, and this query snapshot is actually map of string dynamic, and let's close them. Thing 3, okay, and let's make it as a get, and let's call it build views. Now we need to return something. The thing that we need to return is db.collection, which are users dot doc, or no, sorry, dot snapshot, and that's it. We just have to get all the users as snapshots. Now let's go back here, and we have to define a stream inside here. So the stream would be Firebase helper dot build views, and inside here I'm just gonna say if if different than snapshot dot has data, we're gonna return a circular progress indicator. And let's have a const here. And if we have data, return, or before the return, let's have final list, since we will have many users, not only one users, list of users model, and let's call it users is equal to empty list for now. Then after it, final list of query document snapshot, and this might be nullable because we might have no data at all. Let's say docs is equal to snapshot dot data, and this might be nullable dot docs. Now let's check if docs is not null, and docs, since it's a list, is not empty. What we are going to do, we're gonna say, or before that, let's check if docs equal to null and docs is empty, or have or docs dot is empty, and no need for the question mark. Okay, now we're gonna return text and say no data, and let's have const here. Now if we pass this to condition, if we have data and the docs are not null and they are not empty, what we are going to do, we're gonna say for var doc in docs. For each doc, we're gonna say user dot add user model dot from JSON the doc as doc dot data as map string dynamic, and that's it. Maybe we can have a comma here. Okay, but before we do that, let's only check if doc dot data different from null, and let's have the users the add inside here. Now we have to return widget eventually, so for now I'm just gonna say, let me just say text, let's say first user ID is, or name, let's say name is users dot first dot name, and that's it. Now in the sign up we need to check something, so let's say if is saved, if it's is saved inside here, what we are going to do, we're gonna say, okay, so navigator dot push context, the route is what? The route is material page route, and we need to specify context inside here. Then we're gonna say const home screen, and that's it. Now to solve this issue, we only have to say and mounted. Okay, so because if it's not mounted, we can't push to another screen because the user already dismissed that screen. So let's rerun the app and let's enter a new user. So let's say mark at gmail.com and one. Okay, so mark, and let's say sign up here. Hopefully if it's work. So first user is Mark. Now I don't know why Mark came before that user Calv, I think. So we have Calv and we have Mark. Let's show both of them. Let's go to home screen, and instead of showing that, let's say column, and in the children let's say users dot map. Let me add the toList inside here, and in here let's say text or name is e.name, and that's it. Okay, so if we save it here, you can see that name is Mark, name is Cal. So we are retrieving the data from here and we are pushing the data. So that was all. Thank you guys for watching, and if you like the video, make sure to subscribe and turn on your notification bell so you don't miss our content, and I will see you in the next video.